Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the June edition of Next IT's monthly webinar series. My name is Don Spire and with me today is my coworker John Sahaki with Next IT. And we're doing a free webinar each month to help people keep up with the latest tools and best practices around IT. So in order to get through the presentation quickly, we've muted everyone's sound and video. So if you have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A feature and we'll address those at the end. So first, just a quick introduction to Next IT. We are an end-to-end technology solution provider. And our focus is on technology solutions that make business sense for small and mid-sized organizations. We've been serving Michigan and the Midwest since 2001 with multiple offices throughout the state. And the topic of today's webinar is dark web monitoring. And the goal of today is to give everyone a better understanding of the dangers of the dark web and some of the tools and solutions out there to help protect you. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll be offering a free dark web assessment to everyone on this webinar today. And with that, I will jump right into what is the dark web. So we hear about it, not sure how we get there, but we know that it's a place for illegal activity. The way we like to describe where the dark web is using an iceberg as an example. So you have your surface web, which is comprised of 4% of the internet. This is where you're most familiar with your Googles, Facebook, sites that you can go to by simply typing in a search into your browser. And then you have your deep web, which is comprises 90% of the web. And this is non-searchable data, things like webmail, online banking, and other things that are restricted, that not the general public has access to. And then finally, we have the dark web, which is 6% of the internet, and that's intentionally hidden. You can't access that through your normal web browser. You need a special browser and sometimes special tools to be able to access the dark web. And this is where most of the illegal activity occurs. So we're going to spend some time going over the landscape of cybersecurity and how it impacts businesses, and then take you through some of the screenshots on how criminals are stealing your data. And also want to give you an idea on how these breaches are happening. And this all ties into how your greatest risks are your employees. That there are a few bad actors. They'll try a number of ways to steal your information, and it comes down to human error. So there's this concept of zero trust, and you have to understand or go by the mindset that everyone has been compromised. It's all about access management and making sure the right people have the right secure access using the right machines with the right privileges. Ultimately, monitoring that compromise by ultimately monitoring that compromise by looking at it from that individual access management level. It helps you keep an eye on that front door. So I'm sure that there have been times that employees have privileges beyond what their role needs them to have, or they're logging into a machine that they shouldn't have access to, access to transactions and that sort of thing. And you don't look at that access piece. So that's a huge factor in creating a cybersecurity framework. Because of these breaches, we're seeing compliance laws across the world, starting with GDPR in Europe. This is the first instance seeing compliance being mandatory. Now, here in the U.S., with California's Consumer Privacy Act and New York's SHIELD Act, they're requiring small and large businesses to have insight on what their employees are doing and reporting these breaches. So this needs to be a priority for checks and balances. This becomes increasingly complicated now because people are moving to a remote workforce, and so how do you manage that visibility? This is important, and it's also the law. So it's only a matter of time when all states are going to have similar compliance laws. So when your employees use their work email on websites like the ones listed below, it makes, listed here on this slide, it makes your business vulnerable to a breach. And the question is, where has your company's where have your company's work credentials been? Here's 9 ways that your employees' work credentials can lead to a breach. And you want to ask if you know if your employees are using their work credentials on any of these other third parties. And even with the best of intentions, and doing the day-to-day jobs, it's still a risk. So the best way to be alerted if there is a compromise from one of these third-party sites is with dark web monitoring, being able to be notified if your company's at risk due to exposed credentials. And a lot of the time, companies that experience a breach may not publicly disclose they've had a breach for weeks or even months later. And by that time, these cyber criminals have already stolen and sold the data out there on the dark web. Another thing to think about is what do you do when you onboard and offboard an employee? When someone leaves your company, how do you know if they have an Amazon account using their work credentials, or how do you know if they have a Dropbox account and they're leaving company data and information on those third parties after they're gone? So just shutting off an email isn't really going to limit access. So it's important another reason it's important to monitor and take action whenever someone leaves a company. There are fines if you, as a company, are not protecting your company's data, and it ties back, really ties back to being compliant. So here's some snapshots here. The dark web is it's actually real people and cyber criminals, and they've gotten pretty sophisticated and actually pretty sneaky. These cyber criminals, they're putting out job postings now, recruiting people with design or engineering systems, engineering systems experience to work. So they're offering salaries of over $700,000 a year if you're pretty good at it. They actually have employee reviews. If you really do well in your review, you can get a pay increase and bonuses and make up up to $1 million, over $1 million per year, just writing this bad malware. So let's go through some of these examples and some snapshots. So here one. The dark web, it's just like surfing the web, the normal web in some ways, in the sense that it even has its own version of an eBay or Amazon, where they will, instead of selling legitimate products, they'll sell people's information, such as credit card numbers, compromised credentials, and other data. And they're selling this information, and they get reviews on the stolen data. So if you're a 5-star hacker, you definitely have some credibility in the space and recurring customers. And here's another snapshot into the dark web. It's crazy what can be found that cyber criminals are selling. This is a posting selling the Kansas voter database with about 1.8 million voters information. It includes full name, address, phone number, date of birth, gender, voter status, and this year's an election year. Some states are moving to online voting, sorry about that, due to COVID. So this can be a pretty big risk. And it's since this year, sorry, I'm getting behind on my slides here. Going back. Okay, here's yeah, that's it. Another one. There's a database with email addresses and passwords being sold for $10 each. There's even some ratings with this posting. It looks like the quality of the information was given 5 stars. The seller's communication with the buyer was 4 stars. If it's a holiday, you might receive a holiday discount. So it's just kind of bizarre how they're anonymous, so they can get away with these things. Another snapshot here. This is a curated list of credit card information of California business owners with high credit scores. So anytime you see full Z on a data set, it means that there's enough personal information provided to commit identity fraud. And this posting was so popular that it sold out of stock. So another snapshot here. Since we moved to a remote work environment, people are using Zoom, Teams, WebEx, and other apps to stay connected and do the virtual meetings. And there's some dangers in those as well. Hackers, they breached Zoom and posted their clients' Zoom accounts on the dark web. And this data included email addresses, passwords, meeting IDs, host names, account type, and a couple suggestions informing your employees when using these virtual meeting outlets are to use a waiting room. That way you have control on who comes into your meeting, and also have everyone introduce themselves if possible, so you know who's on the call. Having control of screen sharing and having people ask permission to share their screen with you. If you're presented a deck, to make sure you hide other company tabs or spreadsheets that have sensitive information that shouldn't be seen, and then change meeting room passwords frequently. Let's see. So cyber criminals are using ransomware now for public extortion of a company. General guidance is that if you receive ransomware, don't pay it, because you'll probably not get your data back. The cyber criminals are realizing that there's an opportunity here to take this a step further now too, saying, fine, if you don't agree to pay the ransomware, then we're going to release the data on the dark web to ruin your reputation. We saw this happen with Travelex. They were hit with ransomware and asked to pay the ransom. And they actually paid the ransom, and the cyber criminals released the company's data anyways. There was personal information of their customers on the dark web now. So just showing you an example of how cyber criminals can get a foothold in your organization and cause some serious damage to your reputation. So this is why it's important to have a comprehensive security plan in place for your business. Let's see, here's another way that, another method, I guess, that cyber criminals are capitalizing on how easy it is to execute these attacks. And it's not the kid in a hoodie in the basement anymore. They're very sophisticated actual companies that are making it easier for cyber criminals to do their attacks. And so here's one of the ransomware as a service models here. You sign up for $200 or $300 a month, and then you get a nice branded platform that you can log into. You add in all the other people or companies that you want to attack, and they have pre-made campaigns and phishing emails already made for you to send out with ransomware attached to it. Then you monitor your ransomware campaign through the nice pretty dashboard to see who opened the email, clicked on the link, and who paid the ransom. It's this you can see how this can help cyber criminals organize the different ransomware that they have out on people and businesses. You can even chat with people. You can withdraw the money Bitcoin you received, and there's even a support link for customer service. Another thing that they're doing is they're selling phishing kits. So phishing, this is one of the easiest ways cyber criminals infiltrate and breach a network. Now, in these phishing kits here, they're a how-to guide on how to hack popular sites, such as Facebook or eBay. The cyber criminals are providing there are step-by-step instructions on how to hack into Facebook and using a phishing attack and providing a certain code to use. So it just makes it easier for people to get into that. And let's see, take a look. Here's another one on the Facebook login page, kind of an example. It looks identical. They look the fake one to the phishing one. However, one of them is not the real Facebook login page. When a cyber criminal puts a Facebook link in a phishing email, and then that end user clicks on it, it looks like they're about to sign into their Facebook account, but it's not the real landing page. These cyber criminals now they have your email and your password when you try to log into those. And then with COVID-19, the phishing attacks have really surged. So here's some examples of COVID-19 related phishing emails. This one, it looks like it coming from the CDC, but it's actually a phishing email. There's various ways that you can identify if it's a phishing email, but you're only if you take your time to look at it closely. So with phishing attacks, yeah, they're not just emails; they're being sent through text messages as well, and this will just a way to trick people into clicking on a link from their mobile device to find out more about government aid. This one was specifically. So with that, I want to turn it over to my cohort, John Sahaki. He's going to go over some of the solutions and tools that are out there to help try to protect yourself from these things.
Thanks, Don. That was a great explanation of how cyber attacks have increased over the years and how they're getting more and more efficient and effective in getting classified information from us. Here's some good email hygiene that we're asking you to, please take a little bit of time. Right now, the CDC is recommending we at least wash our hands for every 20 seconds when we go out and interact with people to try to make sure we've got germs and especially the COVID virus washed off of us. We could at least take 20 seconds to review each email to avoid to be a victim of a phishing or a scam tactic. With the previous examples Don gave, it's very hard to see the difference. They're copying the fonts as well as all the content. But with our end user training, we'll show you the best ways to identify these notorious actors. How to protect your employees. First, get all the facts, right? Major events like coronavirus create new opportunities for cyber criminals to exploit, but smart defense doesn't let them. These tips can help keep systems and data safer in uncertain times. Here's a bunch of tips and tricks, and a couple I've highlighted, that we think are really important. Get the facts, use the information from a reliable source. What we like to say is, if it seems too good to be true, it probably isn't. You better do some more investigation. Think twice before clicking on any link. Once you've clicked on the link, that can bring that ransomware onto your computer. You may not even know it. It may actually just take you to something that looks like what you're expecting, and now you've got potentially a ransomware virus or even a Trojan horse virus that is looking at your keystrokes to identify passwords and then spread out through your network and not just infect your computer, but other computers connected to your network. Encourage safe password practices. Don't write passwords on sticky notes. Don't put them underneath your keyboards. We've got a lot of tools now that we need to make sure that we're setting up good password policies and making sure that we're including those good password practices in our daily routine. Have a dark web monitoring system in place. That's exactly what we're trying to promote here, is make sure you've got a system for monitoring the dark web so you know when those user addresses are out there and the passwords have been compromised. Ask for help. Consult with a security consultant just like NextIT. We'd love to talk to you about how we can help you plan an effective strategy and get our innovative solutions in place to keep your data safe. Simple steps and the right tools to use really make this something that's easy to manage and help keeps your data safe. Increase password security. That we're finding is one of the keys. It's not just changing your password frequently, but making sure that you've got complex password policies in place. Educate on what phishing email looks like. We provide security awareness training tools that you can give to your employees. Very simple half-hour to 1-hour videos with internal testing. So we would be able to send out something that looks like a phishing email to your employees, and when they fall for the bait and click on the invalid link, it would take them back to the testing and training and make sure that they get up to date on all the best ways to see those phishing emails. Stay alert. We're always rushed in our office jobs and trying to get more done in less amount of time. And one of the keys here is to stay alert. If you don't recognize an email or didn't expect it, that should be the first clue that you should do a little more investigation on making sure that that is a valid email or request that's coming from you. And then be aware of captive vulnerability zones. These are free hotspots or Wi-Fi that other people can access. We're all going out to coffee shops or shared Wi-Fis to check up on our emails or possibly our work applications when we're coming back from a meeting, can't get to the office, or even from home. With the pandemic that we've currently had, cyber criminals have been looking into getting more corporate data from users working from home as well. When you're working from home or in any one of these free Wi-Fi hotspots, one of the keys is creating that virtual private network or VPN connection back to your corporate data, and that ensures that all your transactions are encrypted. Also, an identity and access management system is really a key to making sure your business is as secure as possible. Two-factor authentication tool to verify that you are actually the user logging into the system. These are very convenient to use right now, and just send a request or a code to your smartphone that you should have it with you at all times. And you can enter that in there. Single sign-on features are also a great way to ensure that it's the actual person who's signing on to this application. And this helps your employees access a wide number of applications that they need to get to every day with just a single sign-on and password that is secure and managed by your IT company, hopefully Next IT. Password Server helps store those passwords to the various websites and applications, and some password servers can help generate complex passwords as well. This is much better than writing them down on a piece of paper or a journal or sticky notes, or just using the common passwords. This is where we find a lot of people fall short, is they're typically using the same password for every application. And once that password is exposed, like Don was talking to earlier, users in your organization may have other accounts that you're unaware of, but are still using that same login credential and same password. So that can be out there, and the hackers know this better than we do. Continuous monitoring of compromised emails and passwords, is key, and that's what we're doing here with our dark web monitoring. Next IT can provide you with monitoring on a 24/7 basis, and we're constantly being alerted when anybody's information is compromised. And so what we're showing here is what date that credential was compromised, who the compromised person is. So, we've got an email and password data. We've got the password data blocked out here. But when we get the report, you'll see the majority of the password with just the last four characters blocked out. And that gives you, what type of compromise that was. Was it a data breach, or was it something that was exposed? Gives you a source of where they got that information, the origin, and then PI hits, what we're calling that is personal identifiable information. So that tells you if and what information was revealed into that compromise. It may just be name and phone number, email address, possibly physical location, but we've seen social security numbers, driver's license numbers, other personal information on there as well. And it's very important to keep track of this. And once that information is out there on the dark web, make sure you've got everything changed on your work and important application emails and passwords. Monitoring the supply chain is very key. Not only do you have the ability to monitor your company's domain of compromises, but monitoring your supply chain also. Third-party vendors that you partner with in your business, and monitor their domains and compromises for vulnerabilities. So if you have a lot of vendors or other people working within your organization and have access and potentially VPN rights into your network, it's helpful to start monitoring their information as well. Here's an example of the Target breach that happened in 2013. So this is why we're talking about monitoring your third-party vendors as well. This actually happened because the HVAC firm that supported Target was hacked. And because the HVAC firm is able to log into their complex heating and cooling systems that are also intelligent and part of the Target network, the hackers were able to get into the HVAC company's network and then use that to bridge into the Target network and get onto their point of sale system and remain undetected. This is one of the largest breaches with over 110 million customers that had credit card data and personal information stolen. If you're able to monitor third parties for compromises and vulnerabilities, that would help significantly prevent a breach on your network. Security awareness training is something we talked about, but we really, truly believe this is one of the keys to making sure your information is safe due to the amount of breaches that happen from phishing attacks. What we're seeing is something in the range of 32% of breaches involve some form of phishing, just like the Target breach. 90% of security breaches are unintentionally caused by human error, with over 92% of malware delivered by email. So these are big numbers, and why we put a large emphasis on making sure your end users are trained. Being able to educate your employees on phishing danger is essential. Teaching them how to identify phishing emails help you reduce the risk of getting breached. At the end of the day, your employees are the weakest link in this cybersecurity challenge. We have the most up-to-date and strongest security system in place, but if one of your users clicks on that wrong phishing email, you've let the criminals in the door and passed all the high security information you put up to date. Threats are ever evolving, becoming more sophisticated and harder to detect. Regular training on the latest criminal tactics will help mitigate this. Your employees are your first and primary line of defense against online crime. Please equip them with the knowledge and skill they need to protect yourself and your business from criminal elements. It's time to be secure. We'd like you to ask Don or I for a dark web scan. We'd like to run that with you and talk about the results. Most of the time we see just a small number of breaches that have happened over the years, and we will have those on the report for you, and we can talk about that. But occasionally we'll run into a client that may have had multiple breaches in a short amount of time. And what we suspect is happening here is that the hackers potentially have gotten access to your network, but they just haven't performed that hack at this point. Maybe they're looking for more information. We see a lot of ransomware attacks where the hackers have had access for weeks, even months. And the key is to, try to get rid of that threat before they've done any damage, and then eliminate it in the future. Okay, now it's time for our question and answer session. Don, you've got some questions for us?
Yeah, we did have two questions here. First one is, let's see, if an ex-employee's credentials are on the dark web, do I need to worry about that if they no longer are with my company?
So that's a great question, and I typically hear that from my clients where they say, that's an old employee, they've been gone for 2 or 3 years. The key here is what we were talking about earlier. That ex-employee has possibly used his or her same email address and password with those third-party applications. So worst case scenario, same email address and password is used for your banking application. And now once that cyber criminal has access to that email and password, they're going to try all of the links that they've seen within your company and all the other companies that you've done business with to make sure that they can get all their bases covered and see what else is out there. A simple one like a Office Max account or some other accounts where you're just gathering information isn't as likely to be troublesome. But we have run across companies where they said, their banking IDs and passwords were exposed with hundreds of thousands of dollars in their account, and were luckily able to catch that and close that hole in their system before anything happened. Question number 2?
Yeah, the second question, if my credentials are on the dark web, can I have them removed?
So yeah, the answer is no. That anything that is placed out there on the internet, whether it's the dark web or your normal web or even the deep web, it's somebody has grabbed hold of that and made that available to the dark web agents and criminals. The key is staying on top of that information, making sure you enforce complex password procedures, and making sure that your users are following best and safe practices with training and constant changing of their passwords, and just stay one part ahead of that. I'm sure you've all heard stories of kids that have put information out there on their social media or the internet, and now that they've grown up and graduated with a degree and are looking for a job, wishing they can get that information out there. It's the same thing with the dark web. Once that information's out there, there's no way to erase it. It's just now stay ahead of the criminals and keep your information safe.
All right. Well, thanks, John. We're running a little bit long on time here, so just to wrap things up here, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And again, we are offering a free dark web scan for anybody who registered for this event today. So we'll be sending out a survey to all the attendees that will give you the option to request the dark web scan. And also wanted to mention that a lot of these tools that John had mentioned, the dark web monitoring, the security tools are all built into Next IT's IT support options. So if you have any questions at all on security, please feel free to call Next IT, and we'd love to help. And that should do it. Thanks
for
again.
your time, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good afternoon.